news dropping just as we began the show. We thought it was important to touch base with it, though. Graham Potter has reportedly signed a contract to be the new West Ham manager. 2.5-year deal with the Hammers going to be unveiled at a London Stadium news conference. Be still my beating heart on Thursday morning. I mean, he's an interesting appointment. Would it be fair to say, Andy, that they really had to get this done before Everton snaffled him up?
Yeah, and I think the funny thing with Graham Potter is that he's had a lot of offers in the last year. A lot of offers from clubs in different countries, not just in
blue
England
chip
as well.
Brands as well. Historical clubs.
Proper blue chip brands, exactly. Yeah. But I just think it's a difficult one because you look at when he left Chelsea, he's been out of the game nearly 2 years. I mean, that's a long time to be out of frontline coaching, I think, especially at his relatively young age. So, you know, obviously he's not quite in the Kirbishley zone, but I think when you look at it, I think his insistence on getting a contract not just to the end of the season, but way beyond that is fair enough and is sensible because it's clear that he needs time to really work on it. And it's not just that West Ham are a club and a sporting project, for want of a better phrase, and needs a bit of an overhaul, but he's going to need a bit of time to get back into it. Now, I think this half season, we talked about, I'm not wishing our lives away, but talking about this point at this season being an opportunity to stand yourself in better stead for next season. I think West Ham are a good example of that because, look, they ain't getting relegated. They're not going to qualify for Europe either. And they've got quite a disaffected fan base at the moment. I've found from going to a couple of their games and, you know, obviously they've always had this difficult relationship with the London Stadium, which is understandable. And, you know, when it's not going well, a lot of fans really check out. And I get that. But it feels to me that West Ham have been really underachieving in the Premier League for a long time. When you look at some of the quality players they've got in that squad, and Potter really needs to have a stock take just for the rest of this season, and then really have at it next season. Look, 'cause we know he's a bright coach. We know he's got loads of great ideas. Just because he's been out the game in terms of frontline action, that doesn't mean he'll have been oblivious to what's going on. I'm sure he'll have been visiting clubs and picking up ideas and working out how other people work. And he's been talking to a lot of people in the game within that period. But I think when you look at all the other jobs that he could have had, it's really interesting that he's gone for this one. Clearly, he thinks that West Ham are really underachieving as well. And there's potential to really do something there. So, look, I think if you look, once they get past the FA Cup game, which we don't know if he's actually going to be on the bench for that, I kind of wonder if he'd be better off sitting in the stand, letting the caretaker deal with it, and then having at it for those 2 home games they've got next week against Fulham and Crystal Palace, which are pretty big. And they've got a real opportunity he's got a real opportunity to make an early impression on those fans there.
He's kind of favoured 3 at the back pretty much everywhere he's gone. One might suggest he doesn't hold the personal for that at West Ham at the moment.
Well, he doesn't have 3 good defenders, are you saying?
He doesn't have 3 good defenders, unfortunately. Right. But I'm like sort of... And also, like, the frustration is that like West Ham just aren't really scoring that many goals. And Graham Potter really doesn't score that many goals, really. He's like... I'm smushing the West Ham pinata into the Graham Potter one, and goals are not falling out. There's midfield battles, getting control of the midfield. But his side needs to be way more clinical than his Chelsea side were. They need to be way more clinical than a lot of managerial performances he's putting in over his career. Is that fair?
It's funny when you say that because Juventus have been having no more than a light sniff around Nicolas Füllkrug in recent days. You'd just be thinking, just F off. Here's a bloke who actually can score the goals with the right service. And we talked about it at the start of the season, how West Ham are sort of almost Chelsea-esque, really, in being able to break quality strikers. That's what they've done, although Füllkrug scored a couple in the last month, they're kind of futile consolation goals at Leicester and at Manchester City. But, you know, I think there is the personnel for them there to do something. And I think when you look at what Potter's had. I think that the set of players that he'll inherit at West Ham compare quite favourably to, say, what he had at Brighton, at least. Okay. So I think there's definitely something to work with. I'm sure he'll get to go out and spend some as well. Although I guess you do ask yourself, is he going to pay slightly for the fact that, previous coaches have had a lot spent on them, and maybe the best thing, certainly for this January, I'm sure they'll want a reinforcement here and there, but a lot is going to be about getting the best out of the players that are currently there, because it's not as if they've got no good players. Look, I understand you've massively got the hump still about Frank's birthday and how they massively let you down there. But ultimately, you did take him to West Ham versus Everton. So.
That's a good point, actually. I only had myself to blame.
Yeah.
They say that Potter's relationship with Brady, like they know each other quite well, and it's kind of like when you're asking for money for footballers, that kind of relationship does help, rather than Lopetegui coming in who doesn't necessarily know the people who are kind of in the boardroom. It's helpful. It is helpful.
Yeah,
well,
I guess the question is, like, does Stadson, the sporting director, stay? Because he's fallen out with the last two coaches. Maybe it's time for a clean slate and to start all over again. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I guess if they do want to go out there and do something in the market, we might say it's impossible to make any meaningful transfers in January. I don't think it is impossible to make any meaningful transfers in January. I think it's very difficult to piece together very, very big deals. But on the other hand, there are a lot of clubs there who are out there, are under financial pressure, who are stuck paying players who they've no interest in a lot of money, who will do something to get rid of them at some point. So, if you can get handy in the loan market, there's maybe something to be done.
Andy, I tell you what's good for cleaning a clean slate, or cleaning a dirty slate even. Bubbles. It's the perfect place to start cleaning slates, one would suggest.
Right. What is it about? I don't know. I guess everything's bigger at the London Stadium, isn't it? But the amount of bubbles, you can back me up on this, the amount of bubbles on a match day is absurd. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you're there before kickoff thinking, you're going to do all your bubbles before the team even comes out. Can you just stop that? Just give it rest. It's an environmental
event now. You've ruined half the Thames. For crying out loud.
As someone who was once gifted a bubble cannon for I think it was my eldest son's 4th birthday to let off loads of bubbles in the garden.
Bubble tech's come on, hasn't it, since we were bairns?
Oh, it was unbelievable. So there was an absolute bubble fest, and then 5 minutes before the end of the party, it broke and it never worked again.
Yeah. Again, I have had exact similar situations with my bubble tech that I've got at home, my 3D printed bubble tech. But I mean, so Graham Potter, even if he's only got 6 months and it all goes to shit, what can he tangibly do to bring the West Ham supporters closer to this bloody football club? Because this bloody running track, or this bloody space between the people and the football, it always just seems like a crevice, a vast expanse too wide, and I don't know when they're going to get it right. They couldn't seem to get it right by winning a European bloody trophy, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the weird thing about them winning the Conference League, it was brilliant, obviously, for them. And, every West Ham fan who was part of that will never forget it, of course. But it didn't really say anything about the progression of the club, did it? It was sort of, and I know Marcus always has a go at me for talking about this, but realistically, any half-decent Premier League team that's in the Conference League should win it. Villa should have won it last season. I can't for the life of me figure out how Chelsea are not going to win it this season. I mean, they're a ludicrously big club, really, in terms of what they've done over the last 20 years to be in the Conference League. Man City in it next season is going to be brilliant. I can't wait for that. It's going to be fantastic. So, I mean, if you look at that, what they did in Europe saved David Moyes from getting the chop at the end of that season and brought him back last season. Still, with the team they had and the money they'd spent on the players, they were well underachieving in the Premier League.
I think their XG was like historically at the lowest in the Premier League for like 4 seasons or something. It was insane.
I mean, the very, very statistically wise Lars Sivertsen said to me, like, when they were sort of when they were going through a good defensive spell, he's like, yeah, this won't last. If you just look at the numbers, and it's quite funny because like you look at. They kind of address that, you know. You think Mavropanos has come in, and then later Todibo. Todibo is a player who like came to West Ham instead of going to Juventus, so he's a quality player. He was on the brink of the French squad when he came in. I don't think he is anymore, but you know, maybe he would be again if Potter can get the best out of him. You look at some of those players, you know, Alvarez. Dortmund wanted him before they dropped him and decided to re-sign Emre Can instead, but. There are players there who, you know, Lucas Paquetá's particular situation, if it hadn't have been for that, Manchester City would have signed him. So, you know, there are players there who Potter, who is an authentically good coach, who is an authentic improver of players, can get more out of. So it's not just a Lopetegui problem, although obviously he was brought in on the ticket of making them more aesthetically attractive. And not only did he not do that, they looked absolutely shamblingly incompetent for most of the time that he was in charge. Potter is starting from a low point, and with incremental improvement, he will get tons of patience and he will get tons of buy-in from the fans, I think.